Hello, and welcome everyone to today's episode of the Afghanistan podcast. Joining me today from Iran, I have Professor Foad Izadi. Professor Izadi is associated with the University of Tehran in the field of American Studies. Professor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we tried connecting a couple of times before, but there were some technical problems on my end because I was traveling. So now I'm back in my studio. Hopefully everything should be fine. Before we start, could you please maybe take a moment or two to tell us a bit about your background?
I have a PhD from Louisiana State University. I'm an associate professor at the University of Tehran. I'm the head of the American Studies Department at the Faculty of World Studies. I'm married, 4 daughters. And I'm happy to be with you.
Professor, so you did your PhD from USA. Before that, I think you did your undergrad, your master's from USA as well. So I can imagine you lived in the USA for quite a long time. How did you find living in USA, opinions? Did any of your views change about the USA-Iran kind of relationship?
You know, as you know, people in the United States, in the United Kingdom, I think similar situation, are generally good. Most people are good. And they don't like violence. They don't like wars. They don't like killing other people or engaging in a genocide. And they like to live peacefully. This is what I found when I was in the United States. So Iranian people, Iran doesn't have any problems with the American people. But in the last 72 years, at least, since the 1953 CIA coup, Iran has been a victim of United States foreign policy. This is a government problem, U.S. government problem.
I think you're absolutely right. People are normally not just courteous to each other, but also curious to know about each other's background and how people live. So I can completely relate to that. So, Professor, in this month of September, we've had like a flurry of activity in terms of geopolitics, especially in West Asia. And we can talk about some of those things. To start with, can we talk about the attacks that took place from Israel into Doha? How do you see that? What's your take on what happened?
You know, this is the nature of the Israeli regime and the American regime. I don't think this was an operation that was only orchestrated by the Israelis. I think Americans knew about the operation well in advance. I think they helped with the operation. They are both regimes, the American regime, Israeli regime, have been killing a lot of innocent people. I think this was the data that came out of UNICEF a couple of weeks ago, that they have been killing 23 children on a daily basis for almost 2 years now. And baby killers engage in this type of deceptions as well. The Hamas representatives were reviewing the latest proposals that came from the United States, and they were attacked in the middle of those negotiations. And this is what happened to Iran as well. Iran was ready to go to the 6th round of negotiations. Iranian foreign minister was supposed to be in Muscat, in Oman. The U.S. representative, Steve Witkoff, was supposed to be there, and they attacked Iran 2 days before the next round.
Yes.
I think Qatar experienced the same issue. They did not expect it. I think there was an agreement between the Qataris and Israelis that Hamas leaders would not be attacked as long as they were in Qatari territory. But as I said, when you easily kill 20, 30 children on a daily basis, then not honoring your agreements is one of the least crimes that you have engaged in.
So very true. It's also really frustrating to see not only is USA not able to stop Israel from doing any of these things, but is an active participant in all of these, what they think as clever tactics, and we see as deceitful and dishonorable tactics, really, where USA actively supports acts like negotiations are taking place. Even now in Doha, USA, Trump was threatening Hamas, saying this is your last chance. You have to take part in these talks. So they were rounding everyone up in a way. And then Israel came and did this. And now America seems to be kind of not sure whether they need to come out and say we were aware of what happened or we were not aware of what happened. Either way, it looks very bad for America.
You know, Qatar is promised to invest more than $1,000 billion, $1 trillion when Trump visited Qatar a few months ago. They have bought more than $38 billion worth of American weapons in the last few years. They have bought over $19 billion worth of anti-missile systems, the THAAD system, Patriot systems. They are paying for the U.S. base in Qatar. So the about 10,000 American soldiers are based in Qatar. They pay for the food, for the accommodation. They built the base for the Americans using Qatari money. And after all these expenses and this type of trying to have good relations with the United States, on the day of the Arab and Islamic Countries Summit in Doha last week, the U.S. Secretary of State visited Jerusalem, visiting with Netanyahu, the man who was responsible for the attack. And he refused to condemn the attack against Qatar. So this is a lesson for everybody that's listening, that how much you try to please the United States, no matter how much money you give to the United States, the Israeli lobby and the Israeli influence in the U.S. political system is at the level that you see, that Netanyahu has a blank check. He can do anything, and he will have the United States support. This is not just a Trump administration issue or a Republican issue. This is what Biden did. The genocide started during his watch, and he supported the genocide until the last day of his presidency.
Yes, I mean, this whole relationship between Doha and Gulf countries and USA, it is, I don't know how it works so far, but it's definitely is something that cannot continue because, as you said, not only has Doha provided the space for the biggest military base for the USA in the Middle East, but on top of that, they're buying all of these weapons that are not actually for Qatar because they can't even use these weapons. Is clearly a bargaining chip. Like they're trying to provide economic aid to USA through buying their weapons, and those weapons are just sitting there, and they're completely reliant on USA to use those things and provide some kind of defense for Doha. And I think as EU is also finding out, outsourcing your defense to someone else, whoever that may be, is not really a great idea.
Yes, and as I said, they spent over $19 billion on these anti-missile defense systems, and none of them work.
Yeah.
So it shows that these missiles are really, they don't belong to Qatar. They pay for it, but they don't have it. They buy it, but when they need it, they cannot use it.
And also, I think people generally worldwide are getting really frustrated by USA supporting Israel in everything Israel is doing, but at the same time pretending that Trump is annoyed at Netanyahu, just like before that. Biden was also doing the same thing behind, pretending that he's getting really frustrated and really annoyed at Netanyahu, but supporting them every step of the way. And in light of that, and I think countries now are beginning to notice all of these things, especially when now Gulf states are under threat as well. Before, when it was just Lebanon and Syria, they could kind of pretend it doesn't involve us. But now that they are fully involved, I think they are all forced to reconsider this whole relationship and where things are going. And in light of that, how do you see this kind of defense agreement that's taken place between Saudi Arabia recently and Pakistan?
Unfortunately, the Pakistani government has relied on financial resources from Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, we have some Pakistani politicians that benefit personally from these relationships. And the Saudi government is basically buying the Pakistani army. That's what is going on. This is not good for a country because countries need to make their own decisions when it comes to foreign relations, defense relations. And if you have to consider the interests of another country, in this case, Saudi Arabia, when you're making those decisions, then you may have a conflict of interest. It may be in the interest of Pakistan to, for example, have good relations with China. And it may be in the interest of Saudi Arabia to have bad relations with Iran, for example. So how do you adjust those issues is going to become difficult because you have grown to be dependent on financial resources of another country. So the hope that we have, given the history of Pakistan, their proud anti-colonialism resistance during the British rule, and the fact that the people of Pakistan are quite aware of what is going on, this would not result, this agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia would not result in influencing Pakistani foreign policy. The Saudis were very close to recognizing Israel before October 7th. And they may do it. There are talks today about how the Saudis can expedite this process of recognizing Israel. And would that recognition that would come sooner or later, would that result in also Pakistan being forced to do the same? This is what I mean when I say that having that dependency on a foreign country's financial resources would limit the capacity of government officials in any country to make their own decisions that are in line with their own best interests. Their countries.
Professor, thank you for those comments, because I'm actually really interested to see what the view is from Iran in relation to this agreement, because it is all very new, and I think it will take months, if not years, for things to iron out and for the world to know exactly what this agreement is about. One of the things I would say is that it's not a unilateral, it's not just Pakistan providing support to Saudi Arabia for financial assistance. It's a two-way thing where the agreement says that attack on one country will be deemed as an attack on both countries. And I think it's more likely that we may see an attack on Pakistan before we see an attack on Saudi Arabia. So I think the test will be, what assistance does Saudi Arabia provide Pakistan if, for example, Pakistan gets attacked by India as it was in May 2025. So, and in that regard, I don't see Saudi forces coming and fighting in Pakistan, but we will see what kind of assistance is available in terms of weapons, which, as we say, those weapons, a lot of those weapons, they may have been purchased by Saudi Arabia, but do they actually belong to Saudi Arabia? In which can they decide where they are used and how they are used? So these things, I think, time will tell. We'll see how it goes. But is it the case that recently someone from Saudi Arabia visited Iran to take Iran into confidence that this agreement is not going to have a negative impact on relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia? Did that take place, or am I imagining it?
I haven't seen it. We had the defense minister of Saudi Arabia coming to Iran a few months ago, but
in April, yes.
In the last few days, I haven't heard any official visit from the Saudi side. And as you said, the Saudis are very much like Qataris when it comes to utilizing American and Western weapons. It depends on the fact that whether these countries want to allow Saudis to use their own weapons, and they may not for different reasons. And the Saudi performance when they tried to destroy Yemen was very weak. So even when the Saudis were allowed to use these weapons with the help of the United States, they engaged in a war with Yemen for almost 8 years. And they didn't succeed. How do we know that? You can see the Yemeni missiles hitting Israeli sites every other day, or a few times.
You're very right.
So if someone in Pakistan thinks that having defense cooperation with the Saudi government will help Pakistan if there is another war with India, I think that's a big miscalculation.
Interesting. Talking about the war that took place between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, I remember at the time there was a big push from Saudi Arabia to try and get Pakistan involved in that. And Pakistan resisted because Pakistan didn't want to get involved in a war between two Muslim countries. So at the time, the Prime Minister, who was the brother of the current Prime Minister in Pakistan, so we had Nawaz Sharif at the time, and the Chief of Army Staff was General Rahil, who is currently based in Saudi Arabia. And basically they said that we cannot take this step without taking it through the parliament, which was in a way kind of trying to find an escape route to say that our parliament will not allow for it. So Pakistan does have these sensitivities that it doesn't want to get involved in these misadventures. And that's what I'm thinking about as well, because Pakistan has close relationships with Iran, shares a border with Iran, doesn't want to have worsening relationships in the future. Actually, relationships have improved a lot, I think, since that war between Iran and Israel. So with all of those things in mind, I think Pakistan will want to have some kind of arrangement where Iran is either taken into confidence, if not kind of bought into the whole agreement, because I can kind of see how this might be expanded to allow other countries to join in, like Egypt or UAE. So yeah, in light of that, I do wonder, how do you see the relationship? Because I think the most important thing is, for me, how are the relationships between Iran and Saudi Arabia? Because with that China brokered kind of improvement in relations, do you think things are on an upward trajectory, or do you think there are still bumps in the road between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, Iran has tried to have normal relations with the Saudi government. The problem was that the Islamic Revolution in Iran overthrew a corrupt monarch, the Shah. And at least some people in Saudi Arabia thought this is not a good example, because someone in Saudi Arabia could think about doing the same thing in Saudi Arabia. So there were a lot of petrodollars spent on anti-Iran activities, propaganda. This affected some other countries, including Pakistan. So, for example, the Saudis in the 1980s, 1990s,
Yes,
maybe up to today, are funding centers, individuals, organizations that think their mission in life is to fight Pakistanis, their own citizens, that may be interested in the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And this resulted in thousands of people getting killed. We had Sepah Sahaba in Pakistan, basically killing people that they thought would want to have better relations with Iran in Pakistan, including doctors, engineers. There was this sort of cleansing, if you can use that word, in terms of assassinations, widespread assassinations. It seems the Saudi government realized that this was not a good policy. The last stage of that policy was their attack against Yemen, because they thought Yemen is having good relations with Iran. But after the failure of that war against Yemen, I think some Saudi officials at least realized that spending more money on fighting Iran is not a good idea. So, as you said, we had that Chinese brokered talks, and then you had Iran-Saudi relations normalized. Iran is interested in making sure that the Saudi financial resources are not used against Iran. Iran is under sanctions. Iran cannot compete with the Saudi petrodollars when it comes to this type of fights. So Iran wants to avoid this type of fights. And you mentioned Egypt, UAE. There was a plan a few years ago that these countries would unite militarily with the support and guidance of the Israelis in a united front against Iran. This was the plan. And the plan didn't materialize because of the problems that these countries had with each other. For example, the problems that Saudis had with the Qataris. So making sure that Pakistan doesn't get involved in these type of regional setups that are not designed to fight the genocidal regime in occupied Palestine, but it's designed to fight Iran. This would be a disaster for the Pakistani government to be part of that. And as you said, the Pakistani officials were insightful enough to not to get involved in Saudi fight against Yemen. And I think that insight continues to be part of the Pakistani government. There are linkage between Iran and Pakistan in terms of economy, culture. We have military leaders meeting each other every few months. Iran-Pakistan relations are good, and keeping it that way would be good for peace in this part of the world.
I think for me, it's very positive to see this improvement in relationship that we saw between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And since then, I think there's been quite a few bumps in the road that could have derailed things, but I thought it was very positive that the improving relationships kind of were able to overcome those hiccups. And one of those, I'm talking about the fall of the Bashar al-Assad government in Syria. I think both countries, regardless of what it was quite sad to see how things took place what things took place in Syria, and how now we have like this Al-Qaeda terror group running the country, and all of that's very sad. But the way both countries handled that situation, and they didn't allow the relationships to get affected. I thought that was a good sign. I think it's very important for Saudi Arabia and Iran to have better relationships so that the whole region can get past the Shia-Sunni constant split. And I think maybe we're seeing some signs of that, where the Gulf countries are now realizing their main enemy is not Iran, and their fears shouldn't be related to Iran, but it is Israel that is running amok in the region, and that's where the danger lies for them. And I think one of the things that kind of helped in that regards as well is not just what happened with Qatar recently, but what happened between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and how in 2019, Yemen attacked Saudi Arabian oil fields, and USA didn't come in to protect Saudi Arabia, even though now recently USA has come in and attacked Yemen on behalf of Israel. And they didn't get much result from it, but it shows where their priorities are. And I think these things are all kind of adding up.
That's true. With regard to Shia-Sunni issue that you mentioned, Palestinians are Sunnis.
Yes.
As you know. And for the last 40 years, we have had American politicians, Europeans, others, telling Iranian officials that if you reduce your support for the Palestinian cause, all the sanctions will go away. They will normalize relations with Iran. They will trade with Iran. And the only problem they have is this issue of Palestine, because they realized that it was Iran that wanted to make sure that the Palestinian cause continues to live, because others, Turkey has had wrong relations with the Israelis. These jets that are bombing were trained, the pilots were trained in Turkey. There's this cooperation between Israeli Air Force and Turkish Air Force. The fuel that Israelis use come from Azerbaijan Republic, a majority Shia country, by the way, going through Turkey to reach Israel. We have had countries like Egypt, Jordan, have had peace agreements with Israelis, and others like Saudi Arabia that don't officially recognize Israel today have had relations with the Israelis since the 1960s. So the relationship continues to live on. It's not, we don't have an official recognition, but unofficially we have dozens of Israeli companies working in Saudi Arabia as we speak. So the only problem in suppressing the Palestinian cause has been Iran. And the Westerners thought that if they can get Iran to stop their support for Palestine, then they can basically get rid of this Palestine issue forever, for good. And Iranian officials have refused to do that. So Iranians are supporting Palestine, Palestinians who are Sunnis, and opposing the Azerbaijani government that is Shia, at least. They're generally seculars, but they were, they came from Shia background.
Yes.
So this is something that Iran is proud of, that Iran's foreign policy is not directed by this Sunni Shia issue. It's directed by opposing Western domination of this part of the world. And
yes,
if you are in line with that policy, you will have good relations with Iran. And if you don't, then that is a problem.
I agree. As a Sunni myself, I agree. I don't see Iranian policies driven by sectarianism, but I do wonder whether the the regional countries who are fearful of Iran, whether they're fearful of Shiism or whether they're fearful of the Iranian revolution, and that they're worried that this kind of uprising might cause political unrest in their own countries? Or do you think is completely different and is to do with kind of being Western puppets in a way?
I think they're afraid of a model that you can have a republic, you can have a population that actually votes for the government that is in charge, a republic that is Islamic, that tries to follow Islamic law when it comes to governing a society, and is also prospering. This is not a good model if you are a corrupt prince trying to basically plunder the resources of the country that you are supposed to be ruling, and sort of have a competition in terms of a model of government that is not doing that.
Yes.
So I think the fear that existed is if that model of an Islamic democracy that is growing and becoming stronger, if that model is accepted by people of this region, then some of the monarchies would have serious problems. I think that is the main problem. And the second issue is what you mentioned, that the foreign policy of many of these countries is dictated by Washington. And I think many politicians, more sober politicians in these countries, realize fighting Iran is not a good idea. But Washington, for many decades now, has tried to create a bloc of neighboring countries to Iran to put pressure on Iran.
Yeah.
And they have succeeded in some instances. They have not in others. Pakistan, I think, has been under pressure to cause difficulties for Iran. And I think Pakistani officials have resisted in doing that. The resistance is not 100%. There was this gas pipeline from Iran to Pakistan.
Yes.
That would have been beneficial to Pakistanis, and because of U.S. pressure, they couldn't resist that pressure. But in terms of creating a setting in Pakistan, a staging ground against Iran, they have refused to do that. So
absolutely, I think
that is the main problem.
Yeah, I think for Pakistan it's very important to have a stable Iran, because any unrest in Iran will result in unrest in Pakistan, and I think they are at least wise enough to see that. Also, I was interested to hear, so in May, I think May and June this year was very important 2 months, because in May we had the 4-day war between Pakistan and India, and in June we had that 12-day war between Iran and Israel, and I think both of those wars will have long-lasting consequences. But one of the things that I noticed listening to Pakistani media, government statements, because straight after the war between India and Pakistan, the Chief of Army Staff, who was elevated to Field Marshal, Asim Munir, he was invited to the White House, and that was the first time a foreign Chief of Army Staff was invited to the White House without any politicians or anyone else being there. And it was in that context that the war was starting between Iran and Israel. And I heard an interview of Pakistani Defense Minister where someone was asking him that this is going to be a very difficult situation for Pakistan, because we've just had improving relationships with America. In the war between India and Pakistan, America played a positive role from Pakistan point of view, in that they didn't side with India. So I was quite impressed that in those difficult situations, Pakistani defense minister had the right mindset, that they were more concerned about how to help Iran rather than how to worry if anything we do might offend USA.
Yes, I think I agree with you. And I think a lot of officials in Pakistan realize that if Americans and Israelis can get away with what they are doing to Iran,
Yes.
if they take over Iran, because I think they want to break Iran apart. I think they want to balkanize Iran, which one of the main victims would be Pakistan. I think
Yes.
If Iran is balkanized, then you will have a Baluchistan Republic. The Baluch on the Iranian side and the Baluch other side would try to create their own country, which is not good for Iran. It's not good for Pakistan. It's not good for Baluchis.
Yes.
That to happen. So I think they realize that not only disintegration of Iran is not good for Pakistan. If they get away with what they're doing to Iran, then Pakistan will be next.
Yes.
Because, one thing that we know about Netanyahu and the Israeli government is that they want to dominate this region.
Yes.
And having a strong Muslim country in this region, in Pakistan, is not what they want. They are not causing serious problems for Pakistan now because their hands are full. But if they get away with their plans, if they succeed in what they are trying to do, once they get a chance, they would come after Pakistan.
Yes, no doubt. And I don't think there's any doubt in Pakistan about this as well, because even Netanyahu has made recent statements saying that a nuclear armed Pakistan is one of their biggest worries.
And one problem we have had with India in the last number of years is very close cooperation between India and Israel.
Yes.
In Kashmir, for example, a lot of Israeli technology is used to suppress the people in Kashmir. And the idea of India on one side and then an Israeli-dominated Iran on the other side for Pakistan would be disaster. They basically want to repeat what you see in Syria. Syria is broken, and then they have installed a regime there that is making peace with Israel. The Israeli and the Syrian officials, the Jordani government have met several times. I think in New York, you're going to hear news of an official security arrangement with the Israelis. So Israelis more or less control Syria when it comes to security issues. And they want to do the same thing to Iran. They want to repeat the experience of Syria in Iran. And if they do that, one of the countries that's going to be affected negatively in a serious manner is going to be Pakistan.
Definitely. And also, yes, I completely agree that they think that they can repeat the Syrian project in Iran. And I think Netanyahu was able to convince Trump in June that Iran is like a pushover because of all of the sanctions over the decades. Iran is weak, and just like Syria, we could just walk in, even though all the signs was to the contrary, and somehow USA kind of just fell for that in a way, because USA, strangely enough, have no policy for the region. They've just outsourced everything to Netanyahu, who's acting like a crazy man.
This is a blank check that Trump has given Netanyahu. I think this type of Israeli-American relationship will continue even if Trump is not the U.S. president.
Yes.
For some time. There is a lot of dislike for the influence of the Israeli government and the Israeli lobby in U.S. politics. And sooner or later, that relationship become normal.
Yes.
But at least for the foreseeable future, I think you're going to have a united front. Americans, Israelis trying to dominate this region using force, killing children, engaging in war crimes, deception. And I think that this is going to... So Iran is not just fighting for Iran. Iran is fighting for the independence of this part of the world.
Professor Izadi, thank you for mentioning that. Previously, you talked about how Iran is supporting Palestine, and the role that Iran is playing is very praiseworthy and also very important. And more countries, every country, should try and help the people in Palestine, regardless of what will happen to us in a way, because the people in Palestine are so desperate. But if we just look at this in terms of realpolitik, what is behind Iran's support for Palestine? Is it ideologically driven? Is it religious based? Is it a means of defending Iran itself? Because if we can keep Israel and America occupied there, then Iran is kind of fighting a war that's not inside Iran, it's outside of Iran. Is it a way of protecting the Iranian revolution? Is it tied to the revolution? How do you see this? Because I've interviewed a number of Iranian citizens in the past, and depending on what their views are politically, their geopolitical kind of outlook is different. So there are people who are saying that the government in Iran is putting Iran in jeopardy just for the sake of the religion. So they're sacrificing the state for the religion. How do you see it?
I think religion is part of it. You cannot be an Islamic republic if you don't care about genocide of Muslims or occupation of Muslim lands in the way that Israelis are doing, and they're doing an apartheid state. Iran's government legitimacy comes from the claim that they're following Islam. This 1979 revolution was an Islamic revolution, overthrowing the Shah, who was providing Israel with oil. What the Azerbaijani government is doing now, that role used to be played by the Iranian government. So I think religion is part of it. And Iranian government officials realized many years ago that Israelis are interested in a greater Israel. How did they realize that? They listened to the Israeli government officials and non-government officials, non-governmental organizations, think tanks. Even Netanyahu mentioned this a few weeks ago.
Yes,
the Israelis have always been interested in a greater Israel. And if you are Iran and you want to stop a greater Israel, you would support the frontline fighters to make sure that those people are not defeated. Because if frontline fighters, geographically, if they are defeated, then the other side would come forward, create that greater Israel.
Yes.
In the maps that exist, I'm sure you have seen them, Iran is not part of that greater Israel. So the map reaches close to the Iranian borders, but it doesn't. The greater Israel is not supposed to take over Iran. But you don't want to be neighboring Israel. You don't want to have borders with Israel because of their expansionist mindset. So it's both religion, it's geopolitics, it's an issue of power, making sure that the Israelis don't dominate this part of the world because of the resources, because of the U.S. backing, because of their financial capacity. If Israelis are the dominant force in this part of the world, then this would be a serious threat to the Islamic civilization, because if the Saudis are totally influenced by the Israelis, if the holy places, the places that Muslims respect, is officially and unofficially dominated by the Israelis, this is going to be a serious problem for the future of Islam.
Yes.
And in order to make sure that that doesn't happen, Iran needed to invest in the Palestinian cause. So it is more than religion, I think. It is an issue of regional dominance. And so even if Iranians were not Muslims, still you don't want to be an expansionist. You don't want to have an expansionist, genocidal, apartheid regime in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because if they can get away with murdering 23 children on a daily basis for 2 years, then they can get away with anything. You don't want that.
Yes, very true. Professor Izadi, how do you see, especially sitting in Iran, how do you see the possibility of a second war with Israel? Because it seems like Israel's not going to sit comfortably knowing that it was not able to defeat Iran, but actually got quite a big punishment from Iran. So how do you see that possibility? And do you think both countries are preparing for that eventuality?
It is true that they got a serious punishment from Iran because it was the Israelis that asked for a ceasefire. How do we know that? J.D. Vance had an interview on the day of the ceasefire saying that he called Amir of Qatar, mentioned this proposed ceasefire. He asked Amir of Qatar to contact Iranian officials. Iranian officials agreed, and then you had a ceasefire. So the idea of the ceasefire came from the other side. Why? Because of the videos that you saw. Iranian ballistic missiles were hitting their targets, not 100%. Israelis also spent a lot of money in anti-missile defense, and unlike Qatar, they actually used those anti-missile systems. So they were able to track a good number of Iranian missiles, but a good number hit their target.
Yeah.
And I think this is the reason they asked for a ceasefire. The Americans vetoed 5 UN resolutions just because the word ceasefire was in that resolution.
Yes.
The resolution
exactly.
that wanted to end the genocide. So why did Gaza become Gaza and Tehran didn't become Gaza? Because of the missiles. If the Palestinians had the same type of missiles that Iran had, then Israelis would ask for a ceasefire themselves 12 days after they started the war against Gaza. So I think that is why they stopped. But they're not done because they haven't achieved their goal. Their goal was to overthrow the Iranian government. If you're worried about Iranian nuclear technology, why would you attack a television station? I don't know if you saw that brave lady continuing to do her job. Even after she heard the first missiles hitting the station, she didn't run away. She continued. I'm sure Pakistani ladies are also very brave, but we have some brave ladies here.
No, we're very proud of that, yeah.
Yes. So they attack the president. These are not nuclear sites. And the reason they want to overthrow the Iranian government is because they realize it is this government that is not allowing Iran to be balkanized. As long as you have the current government, they would push back against the idea of disintegration of Iran. They didn't achieve that goal. They killed over 1,000 people, mostly civilians. They damaged a lot of sites, but they didn't achieve their goal. And Trump has been in office for just 7-8 months, so he's going to be around for more than 3 years. So I think they have time. They are because Trump is giving them a blank check. They need some time. Israelis need sometimes to make sure that defense capacity is enhanced. This THAAD anti-missile systems. Yes. These are American-made. The capacity in the United States is about 30 to 40 missiles a year. That's all they can make.
Yes.
And Israelis used 150 THAAD missiles in 12 days. So they used the 4 or 5 years of capacity of making these missiles, yes, in just 12. So they need to get their defense systems up again and recharge. One reason I think Trump is interested in peace in Ukraine is because of the Israeli lobby pressure. They want to end that war so they can get those supplies to Israel. So I think they need some time. I don't think they're finished. I think you will see another attack on Iran once they become ready. On the Iranian side, they're obviously also working on their defensive and offensive capabilities. So I think if another war comes, it's going to be deadlier than the previous one, because the Israelis don't have any respect for human lives, obviously. Yes. And in order to reach some political objective, they're willing to do whatever it takes. And Iran has no choice but to defend itself.
Yes. It's so true. But at the same time, I just don't know. I can't see how Israel, being such a small, tiny country, can actually take on such a large country like Iran. Because whatever blows Iran receives are going to be spread out amongst a very large geographical location, whereas Israel is a tiny little spot on the map. And despite whatever defenses that they can have, I just find it very difficult. But sometimes logic doesn't work with these people. So I can foresee them having another go.
Right. And, although the size of the land they have occupied is much smaller than the size of Iran, but they have the backing of the United States, the full backing. Even during the 12-day war, you had the British and France refueling planes, helping Israeli fighter jets on their way back to occupied Palestine. The distance between Iran and occupied Palestine is about 3,200 kilometers back and forth.
Yeah.
And these fighter jets can do, F-35, the best versions, can do about 2,100 kilometers. So they're about 1,000 kilometers short when they return to their bases. And they need American, the Israeli army was saying that they were sending 50 fighter jets every time they were attacking Iran during those 12 days. And the number of refueling planes that the Israelis have is 7. So the 43 other Israeli fighter jets needed help from the United States, UK, France, other countries maybe. So this is not just Israel. This is NATO in practice. You have NATO on one side, and then you have Iran. So and it was the other side that asked for a ceasefire. So I think these are the things that you have to keep in mind when it comes to the next round of.
Professor Izadi, how do you see this snapback sanctions that are taking place, and how is that going to impact Iran and Iranian economy?
The impact in terms of economy should not be that great, because these UN sanctions are not economic in nature. We have 6 resolutions, and these resolutions don't deal with Iran's economy. They are not sanctioning Iran's economy. The sanctions that are causing difficulty for Iran's economy are passed by the U.S. Congress. These are American sanctions. But as we speak, we have this propaganda war. Netanyahu has a couple of television stations that broadcast into Iran in Farsi, and he pays for these stations, and the aim is to influence public opinion here. And they have been quite busy in the last few days trying to create this atmosphere that if a snapback mechanism is implemented, then this is going to have huge economic impact, which is not true because of the text of the resolutions. But psychological warfare, if it's successful, then it can have an economic impact because of the psychological warfare, not because of the text of resolutions. So that is going to be an issue. The other side is not in a position to actually do a snapback. In the UN Security Council, we have 5 permanent members. 2 of these permanent members, Russia and China, officially oppose a snapback. They have written letters to the UN Security Council president, rotating president. Their speeches a few days ago at the Security Council opposing snapback is available online. And the reasons they oppose a snapback is that first, these European countries, France and UK, that are also members of the UN Security Council, permanent members, they left the agreement 7 years ago because they stopped implementing the agreement after Trump left the agreement officially. And it's against international law to pick and choose articles of an agreement. So when it comes to the articles of lifting sanctions against Iran, the Europeans are not complying. But when it comes to issue of a snapback, they are fully on board. We had the ICJ, International Court of Justice ruling, 1971, Namibia case, that either you are part of an agreement and you follow all the articles, or you are not. You cannot pick and choose. Both France and UK and also Germany supported the Israeli-American attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. This is against international law. You're not supposed to attack another country unless that country is under Article 42 of the UN Charter. Iran never was. They had no UN backing when it comes to attacking Iran. So they violated the UN Charter, both Israel and United States and these European countries that supported that attack. In fact, Germany said that the Israelis are doing Europe's dirty job. Full support for the attack. The nuclear agreement allows Iran to have 3.67% enrichment. European governments officially published a letter saying that Iran should have zero enrichment. So they're not following that part of the article. So, and the list is quite long. If you're interested, you can read the letters of Russian representative, the Chinese representative, detailing these flaws with the snapback. So what will happen in practice is that there are some countries that are not working with Iran today, even before a snapback is implemented. Those countries are under US pressure. They are not working with Iran today. They are not going to be working with Iran after a snapback. So no change there. And then you have some countries that are not paying attention to US sanctions. They are working with Iran. And they have an excuse to continue to work with Iran because we have a fight at the UN Security Council. We have 2 members saying a snapback is implemented, 2 members saying it's not. US doesn't have a say because they officially left the agreement. So it's 2 against 2. And this creates ambiguity, and ambiguity creates an atmosphere for countries that want to continue to work with Iran to do that. So the claim of the Europeans is that they are implementing a snapback, but that's just a claim because the Security Council is not on board. Even we had a vote a few days ago. Pakistan was good. They sided with the opinion of Russia and China. Algeria did the same. So we had some Muslim countries like Pakistan, Algeria, that voted properly. And then we had other countries that are under the influence of the West that voted with the Western countries.
I wonder why is it that the 3 European countries, UK, France, Germany, why are they so insistent on these snapback sanctions? I think, tell me if you agree, but I think it's less to do with Iran and less to do with Iranian uranium enrichment and all of this. And it's more to do with Russia and Ukraine because they're trying to somehow, firstly, try and get on the good side of USA so that USA can continue supporting Ukraine and prolong that war. And secondly, they're trying to separate Iran, weaken Iran, which is like a Russian ally. How do you see this?
Europeans have a bad track record when it comes to Iran because, like the United States, Europeans were plundering Iranian resources during the Shah's time.
Yeah.
In the 1950s, before the 1953 coup, Iran was the main source of revenue for the British government. I don't know if you knew that. So
no, I didn't know that. No.
In UK, and this is in the 1950s. So all the plunder of India and Pakistan more or less had stopped because these countries became independent. This is after the years after World War II. So a lot of British industries were not back in line. The British government needed money after the war, and Iran provided that money. Over $1 billion a year,
wow.
1953.
Wow.
So, and even after the coup, they continued the plunder. Iran never knew how much oil these Western companies were taking out of Iran because the calculation devices of oil going out of Iran was in the hands of the Western companies. So they were just reporting to the Iranian government that they took 5 million barrels today, 6 million barrels. Who knew how much they took? They were reporting, and Iranians had no way of checking. So Iran was very good to the West when it came to plundering the country's resources. And after the fall of the Shah, they all became upset, not just the Americans. The Europeans had the same feeling. So the European hostilities against Iran dates back before the Ukraine war. They date back many decades. And yes, they are accusing Iran of providing drones to Russia. And they say that they don't like that. It's okay for them to sell weapons to other countries as much as they want, but if Iran does the same thing, then that's not enough. And I agree. They want to be on the good side of the hawkish elements in Washington, and one place they can all agree on, one foreign policy issue, is putting pressure on Iran.
Yeah.
So this is what we have in Europe, which is not in line with European interest. It would
Yes,
be
exactly.
much better for Europe to have normal relations with Iran, normal trade. That is in line with European interests. But the European politicians are generally under the influence of the United States.
Yes, not just better relationship with Iran, but better relationship with Russia. And this war that they've started is insane. And how it's coming at the cost of their own economy, their own citizens. It's just insanity what's going on in Europe. Professor Izadi,
It's not in the interest. It's not in the interest of European people to avoid Russian cheap energy and buy American expensive energy. This is not in the interest of Europeans.
Very true. Professor Izadi, thank you so much for your time. I really am so grateful, and for your insights as well. There's so many other things that I'd love to talk to you about. Maybe another day, Iran's relationship with Turkey, Azerbaijan, what's happening in the Caucasus. So there's a lot to talk about if you'd be so kind to give us more time in the future. But before we sign off today, are there any final words that you'd like to say?
No. As I said, Iran's foreign policy is to resist Israeli-American hegemony, and public opinion matters, especially among countries that support Israel. Public opinion is important, so what you are doing is important. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. If anyone wants to follow, do you have like a blog or your writing? If anyone wanted to follow your thoughts?
I'm on X and Instagram.
Okay.
I do Farsi generally. You can do translate. It's Izadi, my last name. It's @Izadi, which is my last name, and Foad, my first name. Izadi Foad.
Brilliant. I will actually put links to those in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to kind of follow you, they can look into those. But thank you so much, Professor, for your time again today. And I look forward to our conversation next time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey there. I hope you're enjoying this episode. Let me just take a moment to introduce our sponsors for today. This episode is kindly being sponsored by the Worldwide Listings Company Limited, or WLC for short. WLC is a complete A to Z Amazon account management service. So if you're looking to start an e-commerce business, or you already have a business that you want to take to the next level, then get in touch and WLC will be able to help. Just for transparency purposes, let me also mention that WLC is a company that I personally created and am a director of. So when you get in touch with WLC, you will be speaking with directly myself or my team, and we very much look forward to speaking with you to see how we can serve your needs. Thank you. And with that said, let's get back to the episode.